Hello everyone, I'm Caitlin Teeter, and on today's Teeter Tales, I'm going to be doing a review of Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. Jurassic Park is the science fiction novel that the famous 1993 movie was based on. For this review, I'm not going to be going into spoilers for the book, and as always, you can find chapters for the video in the description. So let's start the review. Jurassic Park I don't think I have to explain it much because I'm sure most, if not all of you, are somewhat aware of what this book is about based on the movie, but it is about an island where a rich man has started trying to create a resort/theme park where he has recreated dinosaurs. And he has brought in various experts to kind of check it out and see if they can give him the go-ahead on opening this park. But of course things go wrong and all the people on the island end up needing to survive the dinosaurs but also find a way to escape the island. And the book has an extra plot line that is not in the movies really, where they're also trying to figure out how to prevent the dinosaurs from escaping to the mainland. The writing quality of Jurassic Park is very well done. I think this book is extremely engaging and gripping. It keeps you invested and on the edge of your seat. The atmosphere that Crichton creates is very unique and kind of heavy, but immerses you in that suspenseful trying to survive in a jungle setting with these prehistoric creatures that shouldn't be alive in the modern day. He also does the science fiction parts of this very well. I found that his explorations of chaos theory, or even his explanations for how the dinosaurs have been recreated, was very well done. While it's still fiction, he builds it out with such depth and detail that you can overlook it and it really feels like you are reading something that could actually happen. The one part of the science fiction element that I would critique is the portrayal of the dinosaurs. This is something that has been discussed for years since the novel and the book came out. Parts of the portrayals are simply from being outdated, but others are also just oversights that Crichton had. Some obvious examples are the velociraptors are not actually the species velociraptor, they're probably something more like Utah raptor. So there are naming mistakes such as that, but there are also odd moments where there's a scene in the book where he has the T-Rex swimming along a river and then attempting to grab people with its tongue because they're out of reach, and that whole scene felt not like a real animal's behavior and pulled me out of the science fiction part of it a bit. But overall, I still think Crichton did a great job of building out this scenario of dinosaurs that have been created in a modern setting. The plot is paced very well in this novel. You have those moments where characters are talking more about theory and slower moments, but they're balanced out with lots of action scenes, and again, the suspense is built out so well that Crichton is able to bring scenes to a head when he's really built out that suspense as much as he can. And so I think the pace of this book is very well done. I would say that the characters in Jurassic Park are not likable. I have read a few books by Crichton, and I've not found any of his characters to be that likable. They're interesting, and he has well thought out backstories for them, their life histories, their goals and motivations, but they're just not characters I find myself getting invested in. There were only, I think, 3 characters who I really would say I enjoyed in the book, and I was not super invested in them as characters. They were just more tolerable than some of the other characters in the book. So I think that if you're going to be reading Jurassic Park, it's not a book that you're going to be reading for the characters or their stories, but it's going to be something you pick up for the writing or the plot and that atmosphere that Crichton creates and that suspense. For the content guide, I would say that this book has quite a bit to be wary of before you let younger readers read it, or if you're a more cautious reader. There are 2 main things that I would say are the concerns in this book. One being the swearing in the book, and the second being the violence. For the swearing, there is a lot of swearing, and it's very frequent throughout the book. A lot of it is mild profanity, but it does sometimes have stronger profanity, such as the S word. But it never goes as extreme as using the F-bomb, at least not that I can remember. Another thing I'll point out is it does use God's name in vain very frequently, and often that is used as an extreme expletive in the book. So that's something that I thought some of my viewers might be interested in knowing. For the violence in this book is very intense. It is much more intense than the movie. If the movie had portrayed the violence of the book, it would have been R-rated. I personally sometimes struggle to read violence against humans in books, and I was not able to read a few of the death scenes in this book because they were so gory and graphic. They sometimes are shown from the victim's perspective as they are still alive and kind of being torn open and eaten alive by these dinosaurs, and that was something that I thought was just too intense for my own taste, and I had to skip over. A good example of the violence in this book is actually in the prologue of the book. You have a man who has been mauled by a velociraptor and taken to a doctor, and I was able to handle the scene, but it does go into detail of describing, in medical terms, the injuries this man has suffered. And I could see several people finding that to be a bit stomach-churning or too much. Again, throughout the book, it will have those descriptions of wounds or dead bodies that they found, and those violent scenes. So the book is not for the faint-hearted when it comes to the violence. One other thing I would point out for anyone who's considering letting their younger kid read this is that this is a more complex book, and it has a very heavy atmosphere and deals with some heavy themes. I know I read this in high school. I think high school is probably a fine age to read this book, but I would say younger kids wouldn't be able to even grapple with some of the themes in this book, and the general darkness of the book makes it something that's harder to get through and feels a bit oppressive as you're reading it. Jurassic Park as a novel is a hard one for me to put a rating on because on the one hand, it's very well written, and I really appreciate how Crichton was able to build out the world of Jurassic Park and the island and the dinosaurs. But on the other hand, I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I would. As someone who loved the movie and wanted to read the book that it was based on, I was disappointed with a lot of elements of the book, so I would probably give Jurassic Park an 8.5 out of 10. I loved the ending of the movie, which ends with the triumphant music as these survivors are escaping this horrible situation that they found themselves in, whereas the book ends with a much more depressing, ominous note that, for me, was not enjoyable to read. The book, again, is very well written. It has such a gripping, riveting plot, and the setting is so well done, but it leaves a bit of a bad taste in my mouth because it can feel mean-spirited at times. I love how the movie blends wonder with seeing these extinct animals alive, and also combines that with the terror of being chased by these creatures who shouldn't be alive in the modern day. Whereas I feel like the book really leans into the horror and terror of the dinosaurs, but then skims over the wonder of it. And so it really feels like a book that's too engrossed in pessimism for my taste. Jurassic Park, for those who do like a more pessimistic, ominous book, is very well done. And again, the writing is very well done in this, and I do love the atmosphere that Crichton builds with this book. If you are someone like me who enjoys the movie a lot and wants to read the book, I would just give a heads up that this book can feel very different from the film, both in the characters, but also even the events that transpire in the book, and especially in the heaviness that the book has to it. I hope this review was helpful to you and that it gave you some insight into Jurassic Park as a novel. Thank you for stopping by Teeter Tales. Bye!